Welcome. This is the podcast series dedicated to living a revenue culture. The pandemic reminded us that business survival, the long-term survival of a business, is about creating the maximized profit possible. And the only way you get to do that is if you first optimize your culture. And that's what this podcast series is about. And our guest today is Mikey Maynard. Mikey, welcome. Your background is fascinating. You and I have known each other for, it must be 20 years at this point.
I think Tyrannosaurus Rex was a big threat to us back in the day, you and I.
Yeah. And hopefully that's gone now. Mikey's a two-time Ohio State graduate. He's a human capital practice lead with Kaiser Business Advisory Services, which is now become quite a famous organization based on their purpose and how they do business. So that's quite a feather. He's a chief business development proponent. And I'm going to ask him to talk about that today because he's helped build effective boards. He's passionate about delivering science to business leaders, removing the just all gut decisions and do whatever feels good at the moment to have a knowledge-based way to do this. And some of the things that I've learned in the 20 years or so that Mikey and I have worked together is he's one of those rare people that can function at a C-suite level. He can function as a sales lead. He can function as a coach, and he does all of them extremely well. Not very many people function at a high level in all of those areas. So welcome, Mikey. I'm glad to have you here.
A pleasure, my friend. It's been great to be your friend for so many years, and each other being a sounding board for our crazy ideas and that type of thing. So to be welcomed in to your user community is very gratifying, and I really appreciate it.
Well, one of the reasons I'm so glad you're here is, we talk about purpose mattering. And one of the things I've always admired about your work is I don't know anybody who's more giving for referrals or introductions or advice than you are. And that's always been, very warmly received on my side. So thank you for that.
Well, I don't know if we should brag about that or be sorry for the rest of the planet.
Well, tell the listeners, give us a history of what you've done over the years and how it's molded you. And then I'd like you to talk about the things that you're focused on today. That'll be
sure, I'd be happy to do that. So 30 years in conventional corporate life, culminating in a Fortune 500 company where I headed up government education sales, built the division. It's today, 25 years later, still got the best EBITDA of any operating division of that Fortune 500 company. And in the year 2000, a couple of things happened. Number one, I thought, well, there's a new millennium coming, and I'm not sure that I'm well suited for life in corporate America. So maybe I ought to think of an alternative. And secondly, and quite honestly, less facetiously, I found myself as a revenue officer making a difference. It's detectable still 25 years later in the operating results of a publicly traded company. But that meant that I was making a difference, Rick, in exactly this many companies. One.
Yep.
And I found a strong propellant in my next gen of business life, entering a new millennium, to try to make a difference in the operating results of more organizations than just one. And to do that, you really have to give up a sole allegiance to one company and its officers, and you now have to make yourself available sort of globally. And that was a big transition for me. So I've owned my own company for 22 years now. I actually, you'll smile at this, I incorporated the day after Independence Day on the dawn of the new millennium in 2000, because that particular year, 4th of July, Independence Day was on a Sunday. So I couldn't do my incorporation filings and everything until the next day. So July the 5th, 2000, I embarked on my own. And I have spent 22 years literally helping the world's organizations, more than anything, find and grow and keep talent. And my personal superpower happens to be in the generation of revenue. I'm a certified chief revenue officer. Thank you to the revenue game and your wonderful courses and resources and learning events and all of that type of thing. So I'm now equipped. I've always been a bit of a scientist, but now I'm equipped as a revenue scientist. My practice today, I've got 54 consultants, world-class consultants in areas of talent and human capital. And my main job is to find them clients and business. We find that the world's greatest consultants take great joy in the difference that they make in corporations and organizations and even the lives of their client company officers. And to a person, they would all admit they stink at sales and business development. So I do that for them. And these days, I mostly don't get on aircraft or eat bad meals in the airport or wait for Uber in the snow, as I did for many years, but find business for 6 or so very capable world-class consultants. And then every now and then I'll get a CEO or a chairman or a board of directors who personally think they want the old guy. And so I will bolt on my Superman cape in the areas of talent and revenue production and go in to try to save the day, as it were.
Now, you mentioned business development, and you and I have had conversations about this before, and you have probably the most sophisticated approach to business development I've heard. So many people, that's a term that is very common and frequently without a definition. And, would you share a little bit about your definition? And also, I know there's a passion behind that term for you. Share a little bit about why you think that's so important to us now.
Well, the problem we're solving for, and you've spoken on stages all over the world, as have others, is kind of like the old Willie Loman story, Death of a Salesman. Today's buyer customer at all levels, and this is true of me personally as a purchaser of consumer goods, we don't want to talk to a salesperson anymore. There's great distaste for engaging a, quote, salesy individual, when what I really want to do is impartial research to find out what's the smartest thing to buy, procure, own, or deploy. And I can tell you, Rick, just this week, true story, I got a meeting invite via one of my business email addresses. And it wasn't from any contact known to me, but the inviter was an email address. And it was Mike at, and then a company name.com. I know not this Mike person, and I was completely unaware of the company. So I called the company. And after some navigation, I got to the person who heads up business development. And I said, do you have a Mike that works for you? He said, yeah, it's Mike so-and-so. I said, it's really funny because I just got an invasive, unwanted, pesky request for a Zoom meeting with no agenda, no purpose, and no value to me. So I'm wondering what part of Mike's onboarding when he was hired to join your team taught him to aggressively find company owners' emails and just peremptorily send them a meeting invite. Well, our sales development representatives, they get kind of creative, haha, you know how that is, and so on and so forth. So this is how bad it's gotten. Yep. This is how rude and inhumane the fierce, ruthless pursuit of MRR or ARR or membership growth has gotten. Yep. The Gallup organization a few years ago said your typical executive gets interrupted about 318 times a day. I suspect it's more than that, but that's Gallup. Well, that guy, Mike, was just the 319th interruption in my day. And this is why among development rep teams, we typically find them burning over 99% of all leads and getting blocked and anti-spammed and whitelisted and so forth, creating a permanent bad reputation for the company they're supposedly lead qualifying or selling for. And it's going to result in the death of sales. There's now a strong aversion in the marketplace to wanting to deal with anybody like that. And I believe true business development could be the salvation. That's the source of the passion.
So, I you and I have had this conversation, so I know the answer to the question I'm about to ask you, but other people will be really interested. When you define business development, share a little bit about how that's different than the kind of anonymous Mike who sent you that spam mail.
Yeah, it's about the cycle to engage and realize revenue. Business development endeavors can take anywhere from 3 months to 3 years to turn into revenue because it's a long period of serving, really loving the prospective client, not monetizing or spamming or closing anybody, to create a trust-based friendship with economic buyers high up in the corporate chain, who, when there's a need, they say, who's that guy who's been so service-oriented? Who's that woman who did all that thought leadership and navigated us and told us the things we didn't know and never then held out her hand for money? Get that person on the line. I think there's time to do business. I actually just closed a business development deal, 12 years in the making. And in today's world of what have we grown the MRR as of 3 o'clock this afternoon, there's little tolerance for that length of a quote unquote sales cycle.
Interesting. And I'm going to guess you're going to tell me the skill set is significantly different. And the other thing parallel to the skill set is, I'm guessing the organization that has true business development needs to be structured a little differently.
Both are true, two different subjects. So first of all, skill set, more than anything, and I can prove this empirically, so it's not an opinion of a guy that's going to write a book, it's empirically true. The skill set revolves around having business acumen. Every sales organization in the universe makes the same mistake of over-teaching, over-training, and over-coaching product knowledge, when every study that's ever been done of the buying side says that the buyer typically only relies on that salesperson's product knowledge as maybe 7 to 12% of the composite decision to go. But it's 100% of what organizations' training departments train salespeople, and it doesn't make a difference at the end of the day. So we've over-equipped rank and file and even senior executive sales professionals with product knowledge to the detriment of business knowledge. And when you walk into the C-suite, they don't care about product knowledge.
Right.
They want to know what's the impact this is going to make in their business. And for you to even have any kind of an answer that is not being a poser, but is authentic,
Yep.
You're going to have to understand business. And we just don't find very many companies that do that. Now, I'll give kudos to Microsoft Corporation. On their sales side, they'll actually pay for a master's of business administration for salespeople, tuition reimbursement type thing. That's clever, because at least in some parts of Microsoft, which is the world's largest enterprise seller, they realize you don't get into the enterprise boardroom with no business acumen.
Right.
So the skill set, definitely important. Second big mistake we make, and I know you talk about this all over the world, is we think the way we'll get revenue durably up, or in my case, the way I think we would durably do advance trust building for a really sustainable revenue yield, is let's get those salespeople in a room and let's train them. But you know what? If product management on the current release of the product hasn't fixed some bugs, and the internet is full of chatter about that being a defect in the product and it's not really worth the money, then when customer success goes to renew that deal next year, they're going to get the phone slammed on them, and it's not because of the salesperson. And I could give you 100 other sort of back office department examples where we didn't holistically think about what it takes to sustain and support trust in the marketplace. And so we did stopgap patches, like let's send all our salespeople to a training class for 2 days. And if the rest of the org isn't fixed, then I can't do biz dev and salespeople can't sell.
Yeah, it sounds like, you know, again, we've had this conversation frequently, but it sounds like you're really focusing the biz dev person on that buyer's frame of reference and the rest of the organization needs to be following closely behind.
In a perfect world, what I've experienced, and I'll definitely cover this more in the book that I'm working on about business development, should be out this summer. I think how business development functions the very best is by bringing an opportunity to sales that has three characteristics. First of all, the client opportunity here is more desirable. You would think we love and adore all of our customers, but in fact, some are more desirable. Some renew easier. Some are more profitable. Some are just more fun to deal with. The business development function should go seek those, not seek all sales.
Yep.
The guy, Mike, who spammed my emails, will take any deal that comes at him. He's not going to deselect anybody, right?
Right.
In business development, we're going to be very selective because first, we want more desirability. Second, we want more transparency. So when I bring an opportunity to the executive management team of the company, they get to meet the client, the stakeholders, the other department heads. I don't hide any of that and just put a tierce line in Salesforce in a pipeline. I open the kimono. Typically, the inheriting sales team will get private cell phone numbers, private email addresses of key decision makers. They'll see the whole history. They'll be involved in conversations ahead of when this becomes an item in the pipeline. So the second statistic is transparency. I see a lot of pipeline meetings occurring in sales departments all over the world where the rep claims that this is a live deal that's going to hit this month. And when you dig into it, you find out, no, he's talking to the wrong people. She doesn't have stakeholders on board. So biz dev will have already solved for that. And third, the deal that I bring to the sales department should have closability. Yep. There's no last minute, oh gosh, a different initiative came up, or I lost my budget, or we just got acquired by a company out of France and they're not into this. No. Because remember, I've worked for as long as 12 years with the executive team at that company, very high level, the people that can make the decisions and approve the decisions. And I've already researched and dug into and have command of whether this is a closable deal. So what I'm advocating is business development doesn't close it. Business development brings a more desirable opportunity that's very transparent and highly closable, and then I move on. Sales now does what sales is good at, a jointly developed statement of work, quotations, bids, things which price it, justification for the spend, including a calculation of when would they likely recapture the spend. So it's not really a cost, it's really an investment. That's all sales stuff. And if I've done my job, that inevitably is going to have a nearly 100% closing rate. What I see today with the Mike SDR who tried to set a fake meeting up with me, he's burning 99% of his leads. I'm delivering 99% of mine to the top line.
Interesting. So what's becoming clearer to me is the biz dev role is identifying the alignment between the buyer and your selling organization, and then helping the buyer, the senior buyer, to understand the value, so that then the sales department and the buyer's organization can come together on the details.
All that's true. And I think the hallmark of it is, it's as if that identification of linkage is coming with a personal guarantee by me. And that buyer already trusts me and knows I would never let them down. They know they can call me at 3 a.m. at home and I'll pick up. They know I've always come through for them in the past. So my stamping my imprimatur on the selling organization as the right solution, there's no danger I'm doing it simply to line my own pockets. I'm doing it because it's the best solution and I'm personally guaranteeing that. Very little buying activity today comes with that level of a guarantee. If I order something expensive from, say, Amazon, the best I know is I can return it if all the stars align, right? I can box it and print the label and take it to Kohl's, but I don't get an apology from Amazon.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it may not, in fact, fully refund me because I may have had to buy or do things to get that product placed into use. Well, I didn't get that from Amazon, so there's going to be no refund there. So the buyer today looks for a no risk purchase in a world that is so full of sham and flim flam and overrepresentation. You know, you can tweak your reviews so they all look like they're 5 stars, and I have to scroll for 3 hours to get to the 2-star ones. So I just want somebody to guarantee me that if I do business with Rick McPartland at the Revenue Game, it's going to be a no risk purchase. And I believe business development done properly serves that purpose.
Now, one of the things that, you know, this whole podcast is about is the culture of all this. It sounds like you're creating a whole new structure, you know, where the biz dev people with their background in serious business understanding and, you know, organizational, you know, not just coming in because I know how technology, I'm coming into the buying organization because I understand business. I understand their business. I understand the kinds of things they're trying to accomplish. So where do I fit in the org chart?
If you're whom?
If I'm a biz dev person, because I'm certainly not a junior salesperson, you know, in my own company's org chart. You know, do I sometimes threaten, for example, a VP of sales or a CMO? Because,
well, when my book comes out, I'm going to advocate that the business development person, so I call myself Chief Business Development Officer, should report, in my opinion, if the company has one, to the Chief Customer Officer.
Okay.
Or minus that, because that title doesn't exist a lot, especially in mid-size and small cap companies, to the Chief Financial Officer. Because
really?
I'm also placing my personal guarantee up to the finance side of the house, which shall receive and account for revenue. My personal guarantee is that what I'm bringing is a more desirable client set, could, for example, be higher gross profitability or more likelihood to renew if it's an ARR play. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very transparent, so it's unlikely to come off the rails. Chief financial officers have a lot of angst these days because the big deal that's been reported for 3 months that's going to save this quarter, we just discovered it went off the rails. And so the transparency means something to the CFO. And then finally, closability means now the CFO can put it in the budget. Now we know when we're likely to actually receive the funds, and the revenue budget drives the expense budget. And so that's really need to know. And I'm not really in the job to please the VP of sales. I'm in the job to deliver more desirable clientele on a more predictable, take it to the bank basis. And that's a story almost every chief financial officer would certainly appreciate.
Wow. So as we think about this going forward for, 2022 on, you're really separating the short-term tactical KPIs of sales and marketing and aligning to the CFO, which of course has to manage this year's budget, but they're also responsible for the cash flow for the next 5 years. And you're aligning there because they want that predictability. They want that more strategic kind of relationships that I'm going to guess they assume will have a longer life than a single transaction that a sales organization creates. Am I on the right page?
Yes. And though it seems like the way I've discussed biz dev, it's some nebulous way out there long-term, it's actually not. Because engaged in properly for about a 3-year cycle, I'm bringing in deals now every day.
Mm-hmm.
It just, nobody's visible to the fact that I've been on that for 3 years. And so
Right.
eventually the two revenue curves align, and I'm frequently bringing deals that have the characteristics I've talked about. And now the VP of sales or CRO looks like a hero, not solely because of me, I'm not that arrogant, but because now
Sure.
we got more big, juicy clients that we're closing. Nobody knows about the 3 years of lunches and travel and going to ball games and everything else that I did to get that deal, it just shows up ready to go. So the trajectories eventually align nicely, but it means there's a build time of 3 months to 3 years is how I describe it,
Sure.
that the company is going to probably be thinking about making a long-term investment in business development because it's not going to yield right away. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'm guessing that while it's probably like every other statistical thing, some will take 12 years and some will take 12 weeks.
Yep.
And, it just so happens if you go into a senior level office and you're having a real business conversation because you understand them and you understand what they're trying to accomplish. And they're sitting there going, where have you been? I've been trying to get to this issue for years and I haven't found anybody that could carry the conversation. In some cases, I'd guess some of these go quick.
Well, they go quick, and the shocker on that to you and I and your viewer community is that we now realize that the years and millions of dollars we've spent training our sales force on product knowledge have starved those sellers of business acumen. So where all of our sellers are inserting in client companies? Way down low on the food chain, because that's low threat. It's easier to go have a technical conversation with a technical buyer and geek out all day long on my thing does this and the others do that. And the customer gets to play the harsh judge. Well, I actually like the other solution better. And all that's lost in noise, which results in a high default rate out of pipelines on those what were supposed deals.
Right.
And there's a layer of concrete, as Jack Welch used to express it, just above that level where all our salespeople are, that has blocked from you, the economic buyer, the business thought leader, the senior executive, any knowledge that this type of solution even exists. Because no one feels comfortable, business leader, coming and telling you, an important, powerful business leader, stuff you don't know,
Right.
and doing it very authentically, and it's the truth, but would require my business acumen to share that perspective with you. And 100% of salespeople are not comfortable having that conversation.
Yeah, and things like the pandemic and world disorder and some of those continually make the field more complex, and the buyers more interested in helping them reduce fear and anxiety and less about the technical nuances. And I assume it also means, at least in my experience, that when a buyer finds somebody who they trust, they don't let them go very easy.
Yeah, I've had people call me and say, where are you working now? Whatever it is you sell, I want to buy it. It's the personal guarantee aspect of business development. And I believe, Rick, I'm ancient, so I believe we actually all used to sell this way.
Yeah, I think you tend to be right. The market's gotten so confused and so in some ways so big. The easiest thing to train on is the product, because trying to teach people communication and business acumen and market understanding and all those kinds of things, that's hard. And so a lot of companies don't even try. They teach them the product stuff and give them a travel budget, or they give them an automated email tool that sends all those messages that we're all tired of getting and just turns them loose.
But the casualty of what we thought was the magic pill, the predictable revenue model, marketing does things that create leads. Those leads go to sales development reps. They qualify and set an appointment. The appointment is held, and lo and behold, in the room are all the right decision makers who are going to be so wowed with how you do a whiteboard session that they'll just be swept over themselves to cut you a $3 million purchase order. Well, first of all, that probably never happened anyway, but we've fallen off a cliff worshiping that ghost.
Yeah.
And the ultimate casualty is the professional sales executive, because now nobody wants to talk to us because we did all that.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
biz dev swings back in favor of a true, sincere, helpful conversation by somebody who's not monetizing this. When I meet with C-suite folks and investors and board of directors, I say, just so you know, no part of this conversation we're having right now is going to compel me to go to the parking lot, open Salesforce app on my phone and put you in with a dollar amount, an expected date to close, and a stage. It's never going to happen because I don't use pipelines. And they go, wow, all our salespeople do that. I go, yeah, and I'm here to tell you why it's wrong, and we're going to fix that for you.
So tell me, when you deal with your clients, and I know you, you know, when I introduced you, I talked about the fact, you know, you do C-suite stuff, you do sales stuff, you do coaching stuff, you think all through the organization. You know, what do you advise your clients to do in order to do the this century's appropriate model for revenue, as far as team and structure and organization, and who do you hire and how do you manage them? What do you tell your clients?
Well, there's 2 or 3 mistakes I see being made so consistently. I think they're endemic and they've got to be cured. Number 1, stop putting people into jobs without knowing ahead of time how they'll perform. Or the positive statement of that, put in place pre-hire, pre-placement analytics. Who can afford to run a company in any job, not just sales jobs, but in any job? Who can afford to say, hey, HR, send an offer letter, start them on Monday, and we hope they work out? You can't do that.
Right.
And so I see a vast amount of hiring by gut hunch and instinct, much of it adverse to federal, state, and local law, so it may even get the company in trouble, by people not skilled or trained in how to interview, how to select, how to hire. That's got to stop. There's actually a science behind hiring, just like there's a science behind revenue. So that's got to be step 1. You've got to know ahead of placing people into a job like senior account executive, hello, if they can even sell, if they even have business acumen, if they can penetrate the C-suite. And then when you find out they can't, you pay for a lot of needless sales training to try to band-aid the problem. You just hired the wrong person anyway. They're not going to do it. This is truth from hiring science, Rick. You remember the Pareto principle that 80% of your revenue will come from 20% of your sellers?
Yep.
Empirically, I can report to your listeners that's wrong. 86 to 92% of your revenue comes from just 8% of your sellers.
Yep.
So the magic fix, Rick, only hire 8%ers.
Yep.
Stop hiring the fuzzy middle and the bottom feeders and just hire the superstars. That's correction for mistake number 1. Mistake number 2, thinking that revenue belongs to sales or sales and marketing. And you're the acolyte of this. I'm totally preaching to the choir here, but you can't fix revenue by fixing a revenue department. You've got to get all the players on the team lined up behind that. I happen to be a baseball fan. And in baseball, if you've got a superstar hitter, well, it's great that he can hit the ball. What if he never makes it to the base because you guys can't get, through an inning, your half of an inning, to get through the batting order to get him to the plate?
Yep.
So it's silly to just hire batters. That doesn't work. We got all kinds of logistics chain to get that individual aimed and in the batter's box, right?
Yeah, and if you don't have the right people ahead of them or behind them, they get walked every time and they never get to swing.
And then today, what I see more than anything, it's not just the problem with random hiring when it should be scientific hiring. It's not just a problem of not lining up all the departments to drive revenue. It's narcissistic bosses. 75% of the time that you lose a producing member of the team in any job, it's because of their immediate supervisor. Now, I'm not alleging that all supervisors are incompetent or anything like that, but they're very poorly trained these days. In recent times, for several phenomena, COVID included, largely training and development has disappeared in corporate life. So I've got clients right now that want to take their top 2 performers. These are the eagles that are carrying the water for everybody else on the team. and they want to make them sales managers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so first of all, your number's going to drop because those territories aren't going to get managed right. And number two, what are you doing to pre-train two salespeople on how to be leaders of salespeople? They're utterly, totally different jobs. And so in every company, people get moved up with no training and development, and they default to human nature, and they're awful people to work for. And every single viewer in your network has left a job in the past because they got home that evening and said, honey, I just got to tell you, I can't work for that idiot anymore.
Yeah.
You won't believe what she did in a meeting today. That's a narcissistic, incompetent boss. And every company needs to be paying way more attention to how they place people in roles that lead, because one bad leader can eject 30 or 40 people out of your company.
Absolutely. And oftentimes you don't know how many people won't even interview because the leader's reputation precedes them.
Oh, there's some really hilarious stuff going on websites like CareerLeak and Glassdoor and others, where people can report what it was like working for that idiot. And a lot of companies don't scan that, and they don't address those when they're posted. And now their employer brand gets just as ruined as their seller brand. And they call Mikey and go, we need you in here to help, bud. We're missing our number. Something isn't working right. It's almost always one of those three mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things you and I've talked about before, and I always talk about is purpose. And how do you see purpose being part of the whole revenue, biz dev, growth, hire the right people kind of scenario?
So it doesn't matter how I see it. It matters how my clients see it. And here's what they see as purpose. It's always one of two things. One, the founder or executive leadership team have a defined point and more or less a plan for exit. They need to experience a liquidity event. You and I are sharing a client right now where they've been paying into that bank account for 22 years. Yep. It's time to make an exit and live the rest of their lives doing whatever they want to do. And so purpose for them is, Mikey, my whole family future is tied up in this corporation, and it's got to have valuation. So literally my statements of work co-developed with them measure me by progress on growth of valuation. Mm-hmm. So it's extremely clear what has to happen. Their valuation has to go up. If their valuation stays the same or goes down, I'm fired. I have to refund all my fees. That's not very fun.
Nope.
Or secondly, more in the near term, there may not be a defined like owner founder. They may have exited the company, but there are investors in the company now. And they have declared a ferocious slope to the growth of revenue curve. It might be expressed as growth in monthly recurring revenue or annually recurring revenue or membership growth or something else. And they're discovering, and they'll say to me, Mikey, our revenue is being lumpy these days, meaning some quarters we robustly hit the number, which is a very ambitious number anyway. And then the quarter right after that, where you think we do even better, we miss drastically, like tragically, so that at the end of the year, we're not hitting the curve because the little blurbs above were offset by deep drops below the number. And the net of the day, Mikey, we're behind. Get us back on track. Where do we go wrong? I have one major client. They're an industry leader in B2B software as a service. Their infrastructure runs the world's largest call centers. So every reservation agent at Southwest Airlines is using that platform. They don't know it, but they are, okay? And we did a study there for sales cycle. How long does it take to close one of these multi-million dollar deals? And the net answer on average was 225 days from when the lead first was identified until the purchase order, service order, lease documents are done, and we're beginning to install and deliver and so forth, right? But here's the funny thing. Bless their hearts, the client allowed me to speak to any number of their prospective customers who had elected not to go with their solution. So it was a lost deal analysis.
Sure.
And the average deal was lost at day 180. And the account executive and the sales manager and the CRO faithfully to the board of directors reported for 45 more days that deal was sure to come in and save them for the year. And the customer would happily have told them, I'm sorry, we went with a different solution, or the plug was pulled on that project, or the team that was building that out has left the company. And just better understanding of the purpose of what we do would never have let that happen.
Interesting. So last question for you. As you look into the future, what advice do you have first for the senior leaders that you deal with? And then secondly, for the people in their career stages where they're still trying to find that ideal place to work?
So I'll warn any listeners who happen to be that senior revenue executive of what a bank CEO told me this week. She said, Mikey, the reason we continue to rely on you is you just tell the truth. And it's usually really painful for us and really awkward, but we need to not be surrounded by yes people. And the contrarian advice, which is always true, what you come up with, has made us billions of dollars. Painful as it is to hear you say it. So my painful advice for senior executives, you've got to stop worshiping hollow growth in revenue, and you've got to move for profitability. And that's not a popular thing to say to the investment community in the year 2022. In fact, if you talk profit with investors, they begin yawning and reading email on their smartwatches. But it's true. You durably, for your shareholders, have to produce profit. And there's too much shenanigans and cost of chaos associated with worshiping the false idol of hollow revenue minus profit. For career, especially young generation career seekers, the world that needs client-facing help will never go away. It's very challenged right now because of excesses we've created that made it bad for ourselves. I'm in the world to try to correct that, partly with business development. But any product which is complex, new, disruptive, represents innovation or technology we've never heard of before, you can't buy that on Amazon. And you are going to need to get your hands on whatever that is and see how it does what it does. And that requires the hunting guide known as a sales professional or allied terms, right?
Yep.
Because it's not possible to self-shop by looking at 5-star reviews, because the item, object, product, or service is so unusual, there'd be no template that the buyer could apply to understand it at all. And I saw a statistic on a TED Talk the other day that something like 95% of all inventions that will be meaningful to businesses in a day-to-day way have not been invented yet.
Yeah.
So there's new stuff coming. I can't even describe. I don't even know how you'd know what it is, right? And that's where a career in being a sales advisor professional and having business acumen will always be in need.
Yep. That's a home run. You stated it earlier. It's that business acumen. If you don't have it, you can't appreciate this new opportunity that comes from the thing you never heard of before today, and you certainly can't represent it. And that's just an incredible, fun, profitable thing to go do. So yeah.
When I was 3 years ago beginning to search for how could we measure if an applicant for a sales role had business acumen, I purchased and read every book by every author who claimed to have some way to measure business acumen. So a variety of different business titles, but I searched them as cleverly as I could to find out what the contents of each book were. And whenever they said business acumen, I bought it, okay? And without exception, every single one of those authors proposed just what I and you have proposed on this call, that's really important to know. So their book would always say, go to this website and I'll show you my assessment for if a person bears business acumen. And that way you could test them before you hire them, and you'd be snagging competitively from the employee marketplace people with business acumen. And without exception, every instrument was self-rated on a Likert scale of 0 to 5. How good do you think you are at reading financial statements? On a scale of 0 to 5, how much would you say you can command a presence in the boardroom? Well, it's all self-reported. What do salespeople do being competitive? 4s and 5s.
Well, we all know bad salespeople can rise to the occasion to sell themselves into a job over their head.
Yeah, and the good news is, and your viewers can reach out to me and I'll turn them on to it, there is actually a very validated commercial instrument available, more than 20 years in the making. It's not mine, I don't sell it, so I'm not monetizing this, but there's 1 or 2 maybe good assessments that would meet all the legal and HR requirements around the world that actually put you through a pretty hard test of business acumen that you can't fake. That's valid. And if business acumen is important in your selling world, you should be pre-testing people, not letting them tell you or claim they have acumen in the boardroom.
Well, it's interesting, Mike, as I listened to that. Hopefully the CEOs hear your message, because too often salespeople, the senior people responsible for hiring them, they don't even mention business acumen as a requirement.
Because they don't even know.
I know. I hope they're listening to you.
The company that I talked about that's a B2B SaaS industry leader that was losing deals at day 180 and didn't know it, firmly believed that business acumen is essential in their world. So we tested their approximately 100 sales professionals, and the correlation between being a top producer in that world and scoring high on business acumen had a 0.00 chance of being wrong, and it was a pure correlation.
Wow.
So there's 100 data points that tell you that business acumen absolutely correlates with being a star performer in the enterprise B2B SaaS space. And I suspect in every B2B space.
Hopefully that's going to be in your book.
Yep.
Good. Well, Mikey, I thank you for being with us today. And I, as always, love your passion and love your commitment to bringing the science to people trying to do this kind of work. So
my distinct pleasure.
Thank you. So for the rest of you, thank you for joining us today. We have this podcast going. When you sign up for the podcast, you'll also get a chance to be on our blog list, which is once a week. And hopefully we'll see you again the next time, and invite your friends. Thanks.